I'm excited that, once again, Jim, like, how do you get these guests? I mean, Amazon Live, if you don't have any idea who Kevin Kolbe is, boy, you are in for a treat. Just sit back.
You're living under a StreamYard cup.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, no, I'm so excited. I got to meet Kevin early this year virtually, albeit because he came on as a guest on Social Chatter with our friend Christian Karasevich, and then he also came on Launch Your Live, our podcast / YouTube, and so we've really gotten to know Kevin. Kevin's a great guy. I mean, I think we would say he's the kind of guy we could hang out with in real life. I just think he's so much fun, and he's really doing some amazing things with creating video, whether it's live or recorded. I know he uses Ecamm, and one of your favorite tools, and the tool that I'm going to have to go watch his videos, which is Final Cut Pro, because I'm making that leap. That's part of my 2021. I'm going to start doing all this stuff that you've been doing, so that in case you get sick, I can live. But let's bring Kevin on, because he's got a lot of great things to share with us today.
Yeah, absolutely. So without further ado, Amazon Live, would you please welcome video coach, marketing specialist, and content creator, overall great dude, Mr. Kevin Kolbe of Kevin Kolbe Media. What's up, Kevin?
Hey, sorry, I'm texting my mother, trying to explain the internet to her. I'll be with you in just a second.
Oh, okay.
No,
we'll
turn it on. Oh, never mind. I'll do this later. She refers to it as the Facebook. And I can say that because she doesn't have internet.
Well, that's kind of how we joke around too sometimes, Kevin. Like I've told people that my parents are getting an Echo show for Christmas. I've said it multiple times, but they're not watching us on Amazon Live, so they still have no idea. Yeah,
I've given up on trying to get them something. In fact, for years I couldn't even get her a VCR, a VHS machine, because it was like, well, I'm afraid I'll mess it up. And it's like, you turn it on and off. That's all you do. You put the tape in and you play. So somehow I got the other end. It's like, I just buy everything and just figure it out and break it and then send it back.
and then you guys may remember this, especially you, Chris, because you worked for Sony. You know what my mother started out with? The Sony Betamax.
Oh,
yeah. Which actually had higher video quality than VHS.
Yeah,
Beta over VHS.
Yeah.
But the consumers, the world,
they lost
the
tape war.
Yeah, my first VHS machine cost like $900. It was the size of a coffee table. It had a remote that wasn't that long. That all it did was like start, stop. That's it. And I remember the place I bought it from was like a furniture store, because that's where you'd go to buy your V. And they had a wide selection of like 30 movies. And that was it.
Yes. The days when you would run to the different video VHS stores, I don't even know what to call them anymore, to get that tape so you could watch it that weekend with your family, because if Blockbuster was out, you were so upset, right?
Or if it was an extra long movie, you'd get both cassettes.
That's right.
And you get the insert cassette and people right now are like, what the heck are you talking about? It'd be like,
exactly.
insert tape two. And then you'd find out the goober in front of you hadn't rewound it. It's like, it's going to take an hour and a half to rewind this movie.
Right. And then you had to grab the VHS rewinder companion to your, right? And this would rewind your tapes before you had to. So for those of you who are watching, you're not going to get a VCR tape in our carousel. You're not going to get a Betamax the size of a coffee table, unfortunately, although that actually would be awesome. I could see like hipsters buying that,
oh my word, yeah.
all over the world. And so if you've unmuted now and you're hearing what we're talking about right now, Dealcasters Live is not just about drilling down through products that are on sale today or that you might be able to get to work on your content creation. We like to interview experts in the field. We like to interview influencers. And one of the biggest that we know is Kevin Kolbe, who's joined us today on Dealcasters Live. So if you want to know what the experts use and what they might suggest for you, even if you're just starting out or doing all that stuff, there is no better person to talk to today than to Kevin Kolbe. So
I appreciate that.
And soak it up. And so, Kevin, I just wanted to take this opportunity and tell you thank you, because Final Cut Pro was something that I leaned into, I don't know, 8 months ago. And so it didn't take me long to just find your videos. Of course, FCPX and YouTube, and eventually you're gonna find your way to a Kevin Kolbe video because you're doing it right. With the all of the thumbnails and TubeBuddy and all of that, but also the content, and that's really the most important part, right? You can check up boxes with YouTube, and everybody thinks they have the easy button and the special sauce for getting yourself found on YouTube, but you've really found a great way to develop content concisely, so that even if you don't know that much about Final Cut, I just found my way I'm going to the next video. Every time I'm watching, I'm learning a little something else that I can apply to what I do. So thank you for that. And
sure, thank you.
Yeah. So Kevin, tell our viewers, what is the Kevin Kolbe story? I know we were kind of joking beforehand that you have a face for radio. So how did you get to where you are today?
Well, ironically, I did start in radio. When I was a kid, I thought, I wanted to be a lot of different things, but I was fascinated with radio, and I had a chance to get into radio, and even got to work at the station I listened to for a long time growing up. I thought, wow, this is the coolest thing. And then at some point I had a chance to get into television, and all I knew about TV is I could spell it. TV. I had a pretty good shot at it. And it was a very small station, which actually became one of the first groups of stations affiliated with the new network that was starting called Fox. And I worked in television for a long time in Nashville and stations associated with Charlotte and in Raleigh, and ended a run. Wow, I think I was with the last company about 24 years, something like that. I was a creative director at a Fox station. So it's funny how it kind of came full circle, and led just an amazing creative team, far more creative than me. But I'm still to this day cool with that. The position went away, and I thought, how do I use my gifts? How do I do these things? And after chasing some other positions, it just didn't happen. I just started my own video marketing business, and I like to help people do video and get into video and use video to grow. And I think a lot of folks I work with, they're not really techie people or gearheads. They just want to be able to figure out some things, and they know they want things to look better. So that's what I've done most of my career. I've been very blessed with working with amazing people at great stations, and just getting a lot of cool swag too.
And you can never complain about cool swag. That's for sure.
No. The funny thing is, for a long time at Fox, we get this cool swag that would last longer than a lot of our shows. And it was like, oh, well, it was a great water bottle, but I don't remember the show.
Oh, wow. The most memorable part of the new show is the water bottle. That's amazing.
And it was so funny because I would go to a conference every year, and we would get to see the pilots ahead of time, and the pilots that they had picked up, and and they're doing their job a lot of times. And there was a lot of great shows that launched, and then there were ones, and they'd be talking it up, and they'd show the pilot, and we'd look at each other going, "Oh, this is horrible. You can sell this all day long. Ain't nobody going to watch this." By episode 2 or 3, it's like it's going on hiatus.
Yeah.
But I got a great water bottle, and that was the most important thing to us.
And it's probably like baseball and hockey cards. I know Chris has got a hockey card he's very curious about right now that he owns, where you might make some money off of it because there were so few of them.
Yeah. And the cool thing is, there were some neat things. Like, one of my favorite shows of all time still is 24. And so I got to go on a VIP junket to New York when they brought back Live Another Day. Got to meet Kiefer and the cast and do a lot of cool things. But every once in a while you would get some neat stuff for a show that you liked. And it was really neat. But also the fun part was just giving away, promoting shows and keeping up with tech, on that side too. So it was neat.
Yeah, our careers, Kevin, kind of aligned from the standpoint, even though yours is television and mine was the music business, and you've transitioned to your own company as have I. But in the end, you're still working with content creators, and you're still helping them in their journey, and really having them focus on their art, and you kind of help them do that. So I guess I'm curious, like, are most of the people that you work with somewhat beginner level? Are they sort of intermediate? Does it vary? And maybe who do you prefer? I guess working with.
Anybody that has good credit. I'm joking. Pay me up front. I've got a heart for nonprofits. I always have. I love the folks that they're really not in it for the money. And there's a cause behind what they're doing, whatever it might be. So that will always remain something that I love to do. But I want to help people just grow in video. I mean, I've joked about this, but I think there's some truth in it, is that, my ego died a long time ago when I'm working with a client. It's that, if what I'll always say to you, if you're a client, is your success is my success. It's got to work for you. And I've got a client that is a friend of mine, and we've produced 5, 6-ish online courses together. And she'll still to this day say, well, what do you think? And I'm like, what do you think? But we kind of produce it together. We trust each other, and to me, that's worth so much. So, I'm not a troubleshooter. Hey, can I book you and figure out my camera? Yeah, I mean, I can do that, but I would rather take people through a process. I mean, I have several clients right now that either are wanting to start a video podcast. Actually, one was going to do a podcast, and I convinced them, why don't you make it a video podcast? And that way you kind of do one thing and use it twice, and they like that. And other ones are just wanting to maybe, have their presentations look better. They don't know that they'll go back to public speaking, or at least anytime soon. And so I love people, and I love helping them and explaining it, because it makes me learn it too. And that's the other part of it that I like.
That's cool.
And you really hit on something, Kevin, that I find fascinating, because Chris and I talk about all the time. Because like when Chris and I first met, we met at a podcast meetup here in Atlanta, and Chris was, I think he maybe had started, but Chris is like the podcaster. He's the sound snob of the crew here, and I was the live streamer. But what we've seen a lot of is, to your point, is like, it's like this, I don't know if it's emerging, but you've got all these podcasters like, I'd really like to do video.
Yeah.
And, like Christian and I with Launch Your Live have done that when we interview people like you, where we're like, hey, let's make this video so we can put it out there on YouTube and people can like see the interaction, because not everybody's going to think to go listen to a podcast. I think it's fascinating. And especially, what do you guys think? Do you think that's where the future is headed? Or do you think we'll always kind of have this separation?
So I have a theory. It's my prediction for at some point. I think it's going to happen. I think the next thing that YouTube will get into is podcasting. I mean, if you think about it, I mean, they've dominated video. Absolutely, positively dominated video, search video, right? Now they're experimenting with shorts, literally vertical video of 60 seconds or less. They've got community, which is almost kind of like, can be a mini blog on there. I was reading something that Roberto Blake wrote the other day, and I thought it was like a blog post, but it was really good. And they've got their version of Patreon, So what's missing in all this? I think it's podcasting, and I think that's why we're seeing things like what's the Apple thing, Clubhouse that's just launched. Yeah. Now Twitter's going to do theirs, and Alexa's had their voice thing for a while. And to me, it's just the natural transition of, well, if people are already putting it on here, why don't we take on the Spotify's and the iTunes? That's my gut. They don't return my calls, so I don't know if that's true or not. But I mean, the thing is, and I'll say this, and I'll probably contradict myself when I launch another podcast, and it'll just be a podcast only. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you're just starting out, or you're doing something and you want to start a podcast, at least consider the video podcast, even if it's just a solo, because it's easier just to shoot it and never use the video than just do the audio and then think later, well, maybe I should have put video to it. And I'm not a fan of just posting a podcast with just a slide or a graphic. I think that is almost misusing it, even though it's everybody's prerogative. I think it's almost misusing the space as opposed to a talking head, which somebody can engage with, but also maybe listen to in the background.
I 100% agree with that. And I think we're kind of aligned too. It's sort of like it's not peanut butter and chocolate, right? It's like, you can't just say, oh, I'm creating an audio only podcast.
Yeah.
And then I'm just going to plop it onto YouTube because it's the second biggest search engine in the world and expect people are going to want to watch it or that it's going to get found and all of those things. You have to treat YouTube for what it is, which is a very visual medium. And so if you have recorded an audio podcast and you have a visual component that you could work alongside it, but also I think audio podcast is, it's very intimate. It's very like your commute, walking the dog, running, it's more, so you could listen to a podcast for an hour, an hour and a half. On YouTube, it's kind of a lot to ask of someone to sit and watch your video for an hour and a half. It's so you almost have to make a different version, one for the other. But I do, YouTube in Clubhouse you mentioned and Twitter, there's battle for that space, for that intimate audio only space. And it would seem conceivable and maybe not all that difficult for YouTube to have audio only podcasts so you can stay on their platform, get the ads, and everything that they want out of you. And you don't need to go to Apple Podcasts. You don't need to go to Spotify. You don't need to go to Google Podcasts. You can just stay on YouTube. So,
and let's not forget too, Chris, look what Amazon has just recently done. I mean, we're now, our podcasts are on Amazon Music. I mean, Amazon, we're live on Amazon. So Amazon, who already has, a database of gosh knows how many people from all their shopping habits, is now also has this information that they could very easily serve up like, hey, because you like Final Cut Pro, Kevin will be back. Yep. Fell off for a second. Because you got Final Cut Pro, you could easily, you might like this video because I think they sell the software like that on there. And so I think it's really kind of a fascinating thing how this stuff is evolving. And I think that Kevin brings up a fascinating point that, we could actually see YouTube move into the same space. Because you could say Amazon's kind of, in a sense, maybe gone the other way around because we think of them more of as an audio space as opposed to a video space. But now they're moving into the video. Now, granted, they have their Prime Video, but that's more like, it's the TV shows, it's the movies. But, by entering now into this live creator space,
right,
like they have with Amazon Live, I think that they've really, made it very, very interesting.
I agree. And so, Jim, I think this is probably a good time while Kevin is rejoining us, just to mention the contest that we do have going on. So those of you who have chosen to unmute and are listening to us, all you've got to do once you've unmuted and you hear my voice, there's a follow button and it's above Jimmy's head. And if you hit that follow button, and then take a screenshot with your phone. I know most of you are watching on desktop. You can take a screenshot that shows that you're following us. And then once you do that, you can email us at contests@dealcasters.live. That's contests@dealcasters.live. And once you do that, we are giving away some prizes, compliments of StreamYard. Jim, we've got some swag and another cool gift.
You could get one of these giant, no, I'm telling you, it is giant StreamYard coffee mugs. That's one of the gifts. We've also got a t-shirt. I don't have the pillow, but they've got a really nice pillow with the duck, which no one's really quite sure what the name of the duck is, but we've been told that they may release that at some point to let people know who the duck is. And who knows, maybe they'll have a contest. And then we're also giving away a year of the basic plan, which has a $240 value for those of you that might be watching right now that are thinking about getting started on live streaming, or maybe you've been holding back from, multi-streaming because of, finances or whatever. So, StreamYard is what we're using to produce this show. So it's really, really helpful. But, why don't we, while we're also waiting for Kevin to jump back on, because that's what happens with live streams. I wanted to go ahead and show people, it's in the carousel right now. Yeah, and that's, I actually won this Joby 3K from Kevin, because Kevin actually was having a contest. But this is an amazing piece of gear. I mean, you talk about solid, and right in it, you can bend it, right? I can sit here and bend it like I just did here, and I can hold it in different areas. What I like too is you can have your phone, like I actually have the mount, which is also in the carousel, that allows me to upload my phone. And it's got a level in it in case you want to make sure you're level, but just a really solid piece of gear. And I think, a lot of times we don't think about how we're going to, make things work when we put things on our tables or stands. So this is really, I really think it's cool. It's built originally to work with your camera. And there he is. He's back. But we were just talking about the Joby that I won from your contest, Kevin. And I know
Sorry about that. Well, I think my internet actually went down.
The interwebs. That's the beauty of live video, right?
It happens. Yeah.
Prepared and not. We didn't scream. We thought about it, but we just.
What the heck?
What happened? No. Yeah.
Sorry about that.
But, no apologies needed. But yeah, so I was just telling people about the Joby GorillaPod. I really think it's great. I know you use it. Chris uses it as well.
Yeah.
Yep. And this thing's it's a great deal right now. But yeah, so check that out. But I wanted to get back because Kevin, one of the things that I find fascinating about what you do is you like right now, your background and Chris and I talk about that all the time. You just look so good, as Chris would say, sometimes we sound like butter. Well, you just look like a beauty king, because queen just wouldn't sound right.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah.
But you're a big fan of Canon.
Yes.
And I know you have a video where you talk about the Canon M50.
Yes.
Like, and
it's right there.
The starter camera, right? But what exactly, what do you like about Canon? What is it that really, I guess, gets you, because I know we have your camera in the carousel, plus the one you're using now, which I believe is the M6 Mark II.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is phenomenal. I mean, once I bought the M6 Mark II and I played around with the M200, I believe it was. Is it M200? I think it was. And which was fine, but I'm not a big fan of cameras that I can't ever plug a microphone into. So if you're looking for a camera, always something to think about is, does it have an external jack? Like I used to have a Canon G7X Mark II, great little camera, but you couldn't hook up a microphone to it. And that can be an issue. So I ended up, for live streaming, I wanted to, I typically don't produce in 4K, but I wanted to live stream in 4K. And the M6 Mark II is phenomenal. I started 4K and sometimes it gets down converted. But yeah, and some people may say, yeah, maybe, you're getting too blind to brands and stuff like that. And my thing is, I don't care. I mean, I like mics. I love Rode mics because they work. And to me, the Canon cameras, they're not perfect. I mean, they've got issues. And I know there's, I wish the M50 Mark II had more things that were new on it than just a couple of things that Canon did. I also realize Canon's a business. They're in business to make money. But one of the things that I like about Canon is their autofocus is absolutely amazing. They have a ton of lenses, and I think their cameras are just easy to use. I mean, one of the things that people will say is like, well, the M50 is just a beginner's camera. Here's the thing. There might be cameras that are less complicated to start with, but I've seen some amazing things done with an iPhone, which I consider one of my cameras, and some really like just crap stuff done with expensive gear. So I wouldn't, if you're looking for a camera, think about budget and stuff like that. But to me, Canon just works. They're easy to deal with. There's tons of accessories. But again, the autofocus, let me say it since you've already said it, it's butter.
So what makes their autofocus so much better in your opinion than some of the other cameras that you may have tried?
Well, I've heard that Sony has an amazing autofocus, especially in I think the A6600 and some of them like that. I don't know how it all works inside, but I know in like the Hollywood world, they do this thing called a rack focus. And people see it, they probably don't even know it, where like, all of a sudden, if you focused on the camera behind me, I would go blurry as the camera came in. Well, a lot of times what I've done is, because all of my screens will, they're just touch screens. I can just, like if I'm working with a client and they want to zoom in on something, I'll just touch it and the camera will almost duplicate that rack focus because of all the systems inside that I don't understand. I just know it works and works so well. Most of the time I use facial autofocus just because it is absolutely so good.
So wow. I guess for someone who is watching right now on Amazon and they're seeing these cameras, and maybe they don't, they want to upgrade from a webcam, or they're a gamer and they're just wanting to elevate their game a little bit. And there's all kinds of acronyms and terms being thrown around in terms of cameras. One is DSLR, one is mirrorless. So I guess in layman's terms, maybe for someone who's looking at that and saying, okay, I want to improve from. I mean, obviously, everyone should know by now the camera that's built into your laptop or your computer is, can be pretty much hot garbage. So you're going to want to upgrade. But DSLR, mirrorless, where should someone go if they're just wanting to upgrade from just maybe a webcam level?
And I think that's a great question. The FaceTime cameras in laptops, it's like the worst possible camera, other than maybe a flip phone that Red uses on Blacklist, which evidently still works. But I also will say, though, if that's the only thing stopping you from creating content, then use the laptop camera. I think too many people wait to get the right gear until they're going to produce content. And I joke, it's like having enough money to get married. You're never going to have it. And it ain't going to last that long when you get married either. Right. There is no perfect gear. There's gear people like, there's bad gear, but there's not perfect gear. And webcams are fine. And they've come a long way. But what I typically say is, when people will say in these groups, a lot of Facebook groups, well, I need to get a better camera. What should I get? Well, why do you need one? What are you going to do with it? What's your budget? Because I could tell you about a $400 camera or a $2,000 camera. And the $2,000 camera may be phenomenal, but you might be okay with the $500 camera. Mm-hmm. So what's your budget? What are you going to do with it? Are you going to mount it to a desk? Are you going to be hiking with it? Does it need to be weatherproof? And so there's a lot of things that people don't think about. And then, does it come with a lens? Does it come with a mic? Does it come with lights and stuff like that? And I don't say all that because it's easy for people to go, well, I ain't ever getting any gear if I got to think about all that. But, if you go buy a car, you got to think about the tires and the oil and everything else that comes with that you need, right? And there's ways to save. I personally think a lot of kit lenses are fine. Here's the thing. I think there are these terms out here that the professionals, which I guess I am one, but I take issue with this. The professionals are like, well, you don't want to use a kit lens. Why not? Why not? What is wrong with a kit lens? I've shot client work that they loved that's done well with a kit lens. Should I give it back? I mean, so you can do some amazing things with maybe what comes with it. So, the big thing, like Chris is saying, what's the difference with some of these terms? DSLRs were around before mirrorless, and it just means they've got mirrors in them. There's more working parts. They're usually a little bulkier and maybe heavier. And then mirrorless has come along. They're usually lighter. Like the M50 is smaller. It's light. I've got a Canon SL3 that's a little bulkier. But the mirrorless has fewer working parts. They're probably a little bit more trustworthy in terms of just working. But, I think you have to ask yourself, what do you want to do? What do you need to do with it? Does it need dual purpose? That's one of the things I always ask my clients. Do you want something that you can take with you? Because even let's talk mics for a second. Are they going to mount a mic to a desk, or do they want to be able to take it with them? Because that will change that dynamic as well. So, I would say just, I wouldn't look for best camera. I would look for, or at least when you're doing your research, look at how people are using them. Again, I love Canon. I know Sony makes great cameras. I don't know much about a lot of them. In fact, my friend Diana Gladney and I, we give each other crap all the time. I've told her about, that she's gone to the dark side. She started back on Canon. No, I'm not, And I told her I did try and order a Sony, and it got back ordered. So evidently God didn't want me to have one. And then that's the conversation we have. But there's so many cameras out there. I would say don't overspend, maybe, and you can find great deals everywhere. And, just buy one and play with it and try it. The best thing you can do is hit record and post it and see what it does. Just don't buy it and stick it in a box and go, well, one day I'll create something.
Well, Kevin, and you brought up something earlier that I think it was a very interesting comment from my perspective. You said, I'll live stream in 4K, but I don't necessarily record in 4K. And I find it fascinating how sometimes all these people want to live stream in 4K, but some of the platforms that they want to go to now, mind it, you're a YouTuber, it works, but you can't even do 4K on Facebook.
Oh yeah,
let alone 1080p. So if you're going to be a Facebook Live person, why are you going to spend thousands of dollars to get this high-end camera when probably, like you said, something like the Canon M50, if you want the camera, is a great place to start. And I think the microphone one is a great conversation as well. I know you're a fan of Rode. I think we both would agree that Rode's a great product.
Yeah.
In fact, we were going to put the wireless Go's in the carousel, but apparently they're hard to get right now.
Yeah. They're great. I mean, the thing about 4K, I mean, from what I understand, you can live stream on Facebook in 1080p if you're a gamer, but everything else is 720. But I think you just nailed it on the head. Think through, and I speak from experience of buying and then thinking sometimes, think through what you really need it for. And maybe it makes sense to get a little bigger that you can future-proof depending on what you're going to do and what your business is and things like that. But goodness, you can spend a ton of money on gear, a ton, and accessories that you really don't need. In fact, I won't say who it is, but there was a YouTuber, I don't know, a year or so ago that did a video about if you really want to get more client work, you need to buy a gimbal. And I thought, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life, ever. I've never had a client or known of a client to ask me anything about my gear, ever. They want to know, how's it going to help them grow their business? How much is it going to cost? When's it going to, and when are they going to get it? And if I show up with a gimbal or a slider or name it. They never go, well, I'm glad you brought that because I think we're going to need that. I don't even know what it does. So, but yeah, I mean, and as far as microphones too, again, anybody that knows, I mean, all you got to do is go on YouTube and type in, what is the best microphone for? And you're going to get all these opinions, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Oh, you'll just go on and on. But I got to tell you, I've been able to create some cool stuff with little things, and the Rode Wireless Goes. Oh my word, they sound good. They're easy to use, and they pair when you turn them on. And if people watching this don't know what that means, it's like years ago, if you had wireless, you'd have to find the channel. Maybe you can relate to old walkie-talkies. You remember, or the CB radios. Hey, I'm going over to channel 6. And you click it, right? Well, the wireless goes, or the Rode Wireless Goes. When you turn them on, there's a transmitter and there's a receiver, and the transmitter has the mic built in. It's just they work as long as they're charged up. They work, and to me, if you're a beginner, ain't that great? And if you're somebody that's not quite a beginner, ain't that great? Because that's one less thing I got to worry about. And the client I was talking about earlier, the Silversmith, that's how we shoot our audio. And we clip it right under here. In fact, I got a little magnet for it. And we put a little piece of tape here so it doesn't. And the audio sounds phenomenal because she's down like this a lot. So if I was miking up here, you wouldn't hear her. If I was miking under here. So,
yeah, a lot of people, when it comes to video, when it comes to YouTube, and I know we've stressed a lot about audio, and audio is like paramount. It's
oh yeah.
In doing video, if your audio is hot garbage, no one will watch or be able to hear what you're really trying to communicate. I mean, maybe they'll be able to read the captions, but if you're in a big room and there's no carpet, and you've got, the only mic that you've got is on your camera across the room or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you've got to have that lapel, or you've got to have a really good boom if it works, like you said, directionally. But audio is like, it's not even like buying a $400 mic or even $100 mic. You just need to make sure that the sound source is close to where the microphone is.
Yeah.
Is not picking up everything else that's going on and bouncing around the room. So I'm glad that you're touching on audio.
Well, and let me throw something out too that I think it's easy. It's easy to get into the it's got to cost it's got to cost more to be good. And some things you are going to get what you pay for. Granted, but not everything. Like for the longest time, now I can't tell you why I changed. It's what I do. It's like I've got everything I need. Oh, look at that. But I still have an Audio Technica ATR 2100 mic. In fact, I found out about it, I think, from Pat Flynn watching one of his videos.
It's a great mic.
Fantastic mic. Comes with 2 different types of cables, a little cheap mic stand, which is not great, but it comes with it. And it's like under $70 and it sounds phenomenal. But I think what happens is people that don't, they're not really sure. They go, well, it can't be that good, because this guy over here uses that big mic and it's like at least 300 or 400. Yeah. But are you going to record an album? I mean, what are you going to do? So just try it. And, if people would, I think there's a fear of gear. I don't know what to get and I don't know what to buy. And I think all these people say, I need this. And it's just like, start with the basics. You're right. Audio though is the most important part of video. We'll put up with crappy video, but if I can't hear you, I'm just not going to stick around. And, and it just, you can find some really good deals and refurbished. I don't mind buying in fact, today I just bought another camera because why not, right? It's my own Christmas gift to me. I'll tell the wife later when it's in the stocking. But I bought it refurbished. It comes with a guarantee, just as good as the new one. And I saved probably $150.
Wow.
That I can use to buy something else.
I'm all about refurbished and last year's model, right? I mean, it's like,
yes.
Everyone wants to jump at the new, model 128 because that's the new whatever.
Yeah.
It has a, new bell and a new whistle, but then that usually means last year's model comes down.
Yeah.
And that works for me. And I think what we're kind of all talking about is like, find something that absolutely works for what you need it and get good at using that.
Yes.
Don't just go, I'm getting that because Joe Rogan has it, and I'm getting that because, this influencer has it or whatever, and that's the best mic or that's the best camera or whatever. It's like, get the right camera for you and get it the best you possibly can. And then you can graduate once you start making and you feel like you need a better, more expensive piece of.
It's better to use what you've got and start creating and getting your message out there and helping your business than waiting till you get the right gear, which doesn't exist. And then I'll start. It'll always be something.
Well, and to your point, as well, it's like a lot of these people don't realize, I mean, you've gone through this journey. That's a journey that Chris and I have just started when it comes to, as an example, with YouTube monetization. It's not going to happen overnight.
Mm-mm.
Don't sit there and say, well, I'm going to invest all this money. I'm going to have this channel. And next month, I'm going to have dollar bills falling from the sky, because it's not going to happen.
No.
So I think, if anything, I always, kind of preach just try to get better 1% every time you go live. And so if it starts out, it's the microphone, like you said, with, the ATR 2100, very similar to these Samson Q2Us that Chris and I are using right now. And this was about a $70 microphone. But to your point, it's a USB mic and an XLR. So I started out with USB, and then I was like, oh, I can get a sound interface and still use this mic. So I felt like, oh, what a deal. And I love your idea about refurbished cameras. I'm going to have to talk to you when we get done with this, so we don't upset Amazon. But I've thought about that myself. It's like, why get a brand new camera? Because all these, photographer snobs, like, I don't need this anymore, and they get rid of it and go get a new one. So guys like me and Chris can afford to get the camera, because it also goes back to where you're going to use it.
Yeah.
Most of my videos so far has really been, using the desktop. I keep saying I'm going to start doing a little bit more remote. So as people joke sometimes, I'm not in front of the comedy club wall all the time.
But I like it. See, it works, and Chris's background works.
Yes.
I'm not a fan of green screen at all.
Yep, we're not.
Unless you've got like Marvel Studio size budget, it typically doesn't look real. I saw one of the group today. This lady
washed out around the ears.
Yeah, why does my webcam look so bad? I'm like, because it doesn't look like you're really there. I mean, there's nothing you're going to do that's going to give you that depth. I just like real. And so sometimes I think simplifying the process so you can put more of that energy into your message is where you need to be, and so brick background, the guitars are really sweet. And there's things you can do
right
to enhance even that without spending a ton of money. By the way, so Amazon's not upset. You can buy refurbished on Amazon.
Oh, yes.
So there you go.
I was going to say that earlier. Yes.
Yeah. Your show's been renewed.
Exactly. It's about being interesting with your background and not distracting. And like a lot of times the green screen just is like, I can't help but stare. Like, what is that person hiding? Like, why did their ears just disappear? Like, what is happening back there?
I was on a call with a guy one day, and he kept moving, and every time he would move his arms, they would disappear.
Yeah.
And I thought it was fascinating, but distracting at the same time.
All right.
But the other thing too, and maybe this gets off gear a little, so you guys can tell me if I need to stop. But my office studio is a converted bedroom that's 11 by 13, and I can probably get 4 to 5 different shots out of here by just moving the camera, changing the angle, standing up, sitting down, changing the light. And so people think, well, I've got to have a big studio. No, you don't. I got to have all this gear. No, you don't. What's your message? What's your content about? And focus on that. And if you don't want to do a lot of production, go live. You still need to do some production, which I think gets undersold sometimes. But there's no editing and all this other stuff. Now, I realize if you want to repurpose it, that's different. But, just do live.
Yeah.
Right on.
Well, and I love too how your camera, because you're using a camera and not a webcam, that you are able to have that blurred effect. And it really keeps the focus on you, because I think that's the other thing. So to all of you that might be watching right now, if you're on Zoom or use Zoom, stop it with the virtual backgrounds.
Yes.
I'm so tired of watching virtual backgrounds in meetings. Like, just,
we know you're not at the beach.
Yeah, right.
We know you're not a stormtrooper. Stop it.
But yeah, and I love the idea of using the different camera angles. I think that's kind of one of the next thing I'm, thinking about how I can set it up, just to, so, because I, even in the video I was watching earlier you today, where you kind of showing how you were just switching. And in fact, while we're talking about switching, because I know this is something, Chris, you just bought, and I know that you're a big fan of it too. And that's the Elgato Stream Deck, the 32 key. Tell me about that. I think it's fascinating. It's definitely on my. I need to create an Amazon wish list. So maybe my
yeah. Oh yeah, I have one that is way too many items in it. I think the only other thing I have this larger is my Netflix queue of the shows I'm going to watch one day. So the Stream Deck, so here's the mistake I made. The first Stream Deck I bought was 6 buttons because I thought that's all I'll need, and I did one live stream and I thought, I'm sending this thing back. There's not enough, because in Ecamm you can control scenes, and I know that it's coming to StreamYard, that they're working on that integration, and that'll completely change things. And
wow.
So then I had a 15 button, and then not too long ago I upgraded to a 32 button. And for anybody that really doesn't know, and the Stream Deck is not, it doesn't matter whether you're on a Mac or PC. I don't think. I'm on a Mac. I think you can use it because it just hooks in USB.
Mm-hmm.
But so like I use my Stream Deck all the time for just daily tasks. Like I create shortcuts on there. So I've got one for Facebook, StreamYard, YouTube Studio, Ecamm, Google Drive, because I'm lazy. And so I'll just click it and I'll just open up that program, Messengers, my docs, if I want to write or whatever. It's just quicker. But then when I'm in Ecamm, I create my scenes, and that's how I'm using it for my show. And I don't know how StreamYard will end up doing theirs, but it's just an easier way. You can even do it with a presentation, because there's built-in, I think now, things for PowerPoint and Keynote. Yeah. Even my main light here is a Elgato key light, and I can control it now with the Stream Deck. I can control the brightness, the temperature, on and off. And it, to me, I always hesitate to say is it a must-have, but I think it is. I think it really is, because you can do so much stuff with it. I know some guys that use it for editing. I tried it, but I was so used to the keyboard, but you can add like little hotkeys and shortcuts in there if you're editing, and it'll just speed up your editing like that.
Wow. Ooh, that's interesting. I need to try that. I also have the 32, and yeah, to your point, it's like I used it because I was doing a number of presentations, and I was sick and tired of being brought into Zoom or GoToMeeting or whatever, and not being in control of what I was presenting. And, all of a sudden your entire screen's being taken over by PowerPoint, and you're like a little square up into the corner.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, and Jim knows this, because one of the presentations we did together, I was like, I'm going to figure out how to do this so that we are both on the screen as well as our presentation, that we're in control of it. And, I'm flipping through the slides with a button and flipping through another look, and just, like you said, just program all that stuff in Ecamm with those scenes, and just touch of a button. And then when you want to go back to a single talking head, just boom, you want to drop in a lower third, all of that kind of stuff is super seamless. And, you can't get too tricky though, because if you get too flashy and tricky, then it distracts people from what you're saying. But it's the professionalism it goes from here to here when you can see someone that's doing that kind of stuff versus someone that's like sitting here like, can you see my screen? I'm sharing my PowerPoint. Can everybody see that? And
am I on? Hello? Is this thing on? Hello?
It was working a few minutes ago.
Yeah. And there's little tricks you can do like in StreamYard. Like I always know, not StreamYard, in my Stream Deck, I always know like if I'm going live, like the bottom button all the way on the right is always my close, always. And that way I know when I'm ready to end, my finger can just go down and hit it. I know that my main camera is in the upper left. I know there's a mute button in the lower left. So you can create these tricks in there and you can stack your show, as we used to call it in television, however you want. But it just makes it easier. And I mean, even if you were going live, you could create your show that way. And literally what I always call it is go live to tape is what we actually used to call it, where you're doing it live, but you're recording it, but you're almost, by the time you're done, you've got a produced show with lower thirds and everything.
So even, I guess, Kevin, my question would be like similar like to scenes in Ecamm, because Chris and I have started to use Ecamm a lot more. In fact, it's kind of funny sometimes because we will use Ecamm as a virtual cam in StreamYard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because we do like the fact that we can multi-stream with StreamYard, but still have the functionality of Ecamm. Mm-hmm. And I think, maybe someday they'll all come together as one big happy family. We'll see. But I think when you're wanting to take your virtual presenting or even, recording to the next level, you need tools like Ecamm to really do that, or it's going to be extremely difficult.
Yeah. I think that's, some of the clients that I have, they want, they were used to being on stages and giving TED Talks and that, and they got the clicker and now that's changed. So how can they make it look better? How can they easily add some things to it? And that is one of the things when you can and I mean, all my graphics are built in Canva. And so, and this is probably a whole different show, but you start thinking of how does this graphic fit into the show? Where do I want my camera to be in there? So I've actually designed graphics where my camera, it's just more of a picture in pictures over on one side. And I've got the graphics running on this side. And I don't want it to overtake the show, but I want it to enhance it. And little things like that can really set you apart. And again, that's where the Stream Deck just comes in handy. And, if you're not used to using it, I mean, you can have, it's like 99 profiles or something silly. So I just create a different profile for a show. So like I did a Black Friday deal show. I just did something different. And I had I was speaking or doing a virtual thing that week. So I just created a different profile for it. But then you can borrow from different folders. And so like if I have a name super that I like, I don't recreate it 5 times. I just use it for another scene. And it just, and that really helps your production speed things up.
And that was kind of my question is like, can you do multiple profiles? So then it's like if this is for your YouTube setup, it's this profile. Yep. And if it's a live set, that's great. So I guess because a lot of people talk about the ATEM Mini Pro and the ISO, is it really enhance that, or is that like they're like separate tools? I mean,
they're separate tools. I don't have the ATEM. I from what I understand, it is more of a camera switcher. I think more of an input, as opposed to now. You can use Stream Deck that way too. So like if you had 3 cameras, you can set them up all in there. And in fact, you referenced the video. I don't know if that's one you saw, but I did like a quad split where I had my webcam, my iPhone, my M50, and the M6 to show the difference in what they looked like and how it worked. You can easily do that. You can use your iPhone. I use an app called Shoot Clean Camera Feed. It's like $4, but it turns my iPhone into a webcam without any, it's clean HDMI. If you think about it, there's nothing on the screen and it's great. But yeah, you can definitely borrow, and so like I'll have a folder that just says YouTube Live. I have another one called Behind the Live, which is the show that I've done with Ecamm. I'll have something I did over here, and I may just borrow something from here, 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 and it's just bringing it all together and putting it out there on the feed. Makes it nice. The key though is where you store it, because it's just pointing. So I learned the hard way when I had some stuff stored on my desktop, and then I moved it over to an external drive, and all of a sudden it was gone. So, excuse me, I just keep a folder now on an external drive that's called like Live Show Elements. And anything I create, if I don't know if I'm going to use, I'll drop it in there. And then I have other folders for other shows. So I'm always pulling from there. And that way they'll always be there. If that makes sense.
It does.
Yeah.
What
I like about this?
One of my free box things.
Oh, nice. One of the things I like about it is like, you're not talking about this, and we're not talking about this because it's like, this is like this great piece of gear it's all about simplifying what you do so that you can communicate more effectively in what you want to do. So this whether it's a switcher or whether it's the Stream Deck and utilizing Ecamm or whatever software you're using, it's about like your eyes are always on it. You're engaging. You're creating something easily, and so your entire focus is your content and what you're saying and then delivery of it. All of that is there not because you want to be able to be flashy with flying in lower thirds and all of that stuff that can be distracting. It's like, look, this is going to take what I'm saying and make it more effective and reach more people. And it's definitely a great. I mean, the Stream Deck was like a great purchase for me as well. It's just it's kind of an easy button, or 32 of them anyway. It
is very easy to overcomplicate things and overproduce it. And the reason I know that is because I can do it. And I remember after reading Sean Cannell's book, YouTube Secrets, and I wrote down somewhere, stop overthinking it and stop overproducing it, because it's so easy. Oh, I'll just do this. And it's like, wait a minute, what does that have to do with what I'm even talking about? You can do that with gear. Something that I say a lot is that gear won't make you more creative. It can help you create, but it won't make you any more creative. Yeah. And I think that's, just something that, how much do you need? Well, what are you doing? Just always come back to that, to the message and the content, and you may not need as much as you think.
Yeah, no, I think that's extremely, extremely powerful. I think, and I think I even look at it, the Stream Deck is like what a lot of people don't think about. This is where, I guess my Marine Corps background, it's about creating systems for success. Stream Deck allows you to have a system so everything becomes repeatable, easy to do. And so you can just, it becomes almost a no-brainer. You got to make sure you pick the right folder, right? Checklist. Because the worst thing that could happen is you pick the wrong folder and like, wait a minute, that's not the graphic I wanted.
Yeah.
But I think is a great points. And I think there's really just a lot of great value here today and letting people know, what those things are. But so what would you say, Kevin? Have you found the mirrorless cameras? Because I've seen them a couple times when we could go out and see things in person. They're really fascinating. I mean, do you like the mirror over the mirrorless over the DSLR? I
do. I mean, so this one is a mirrorless. The M6 Mark II is a mirrorless. The M50 is a mirrorless. I do have a Canon SL3. And then I just ordered a Canon RP, the EOS RP. And I got it refurbished. I do, because I think they're lighter and there's less moving parts. They seem to be somewhat more, depending on what you're doing, somewhat more. They act faster, if that makes sense. And then a lot of times too, they've gotten a little better with the processing and stuff like that. The funny thing is, I don't really use them that much for photography. Most of my photography is shot with my iPhone. And I had up until recently, I had an iPhone 8 Plus, and it finally, the home button died on it. So I got an 11, just because there was a good deal on it and it was still a good phone. So, but mirrorless, you need to think about the lenses. You might have to get a different mount. Like I've got a little bitty mount that goes onto my M50, which allows me to use almost any lens I want. Older lenses that aren't even made for that camera. This camera right here that I'm using is a Canon, but actually has a Sigma 16 millimeter lens on it that will fit natively on there. And this by far has probably become one of my favorite lenses because of the blurred background.
And I saw that's something you talked about. You really like it because it'll literally still go on that Canon without any.
Oh yeah,
mount. Right.
Yeah, there's no mount. It'll go on that. It'll go on my M50, and I don't need the adapter. Whereas opposed to like the Canon M50, I think it's their M series lens. So I've got like a 22 millimeter that fits natively on the M50, which is probably my other favorite lens. But if I use my 24 to 70, I have to use the little adapter on there, which does it. And the nice thing is you still get the autofocus, you still get everything. But I mean, if I do this, that should focus on my hand and then just
good. Yeah.
That, that's the beauty of it. Is it back in focus?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. That's killer.
So it's, it's nice. And the distance isn't that far back either. It's just wide enough. Which is another thing to think about when you're looking at lenses. How wide do you want? The aperture on this will go all the way down to 1.6, which just means I can let more light in. Which also then helps with the depth. So if it's like a higher f-stop, then you may not get as much. You'd have to do other things to like really be further away from it. But this and I think this lens, I think it's like $300. I mean, it's under $400, and I don't say any of that like it's just cheap, but compared to some lenses,
right,
it's cheap.
Right. So Kevin, so you have multiple cameras going on, and sometimes you're using multiple cameras in the same.
Hey, Chris, I don't have the problem. You have the problem, okay? Not me. Not because I have multiple cameras.
No. I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem.
No, I don't. Please take my card. No, I don't. Please. Honey, I need the other visa.
How much do you worry about, different brands and different camera types and sort of the color, difference in color science, and when you're switching between cameras, it doesn't look completely disparate, from, the one you're using primarily versus another camera. Do you worry about that much? Do you try to adjust it and attenuate it so that it looks kind of seamless? Is that something?
That's a great question. So for a period of time, I had two M50s, and it was the first time ever where I've had multiple cameras that I had two of the exact same. And the reason I did that, the reason I told myself I did that, is so when I went on a shoot, if I needed two cameras, I could set them up exactly the same. Now, they might have different lenses, and that will affect it some, but if the same lighting is there and they're working, plus if one went down, is the lame excuse, then I could always have the other one. So yeah, there is something to be said about being able to match cameras. But having said that, there's also tricks you can do in Final Cut with like an adjustment layer and color grading, where you can make different shots, different cameras kind of look the same to a degree. But yeah, I just don't worry about that much. I mean, the funny thing is, things that'll bother me won't bother anybody else.
Right.
It's like how I watch movies and TV shows. I watch it to enjoy it, be entertained, but then I also watch it to figure out how they did that. Why did they do that? How did they shoot that? I mean, I've ruined movies and television for my wife, who used to just watch and she'll go, "Hey, did you see that?" And I'm like, "I'm sorry. You used to just be able to enjoy it." But that's how so if I'm watching a video and I realize that, even a live stream, that one camera doesn't quite match, I notice it and it'll bother me, when at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter, because again,
now you know what I have to put up when it comes with Chris and audio.
Oh yeah.
You hear that? Like what?
I've ruined podcasts and his entire music collection.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Did you hear that? But yeah, I mean, if depending on what you were doing, it is something to think about. I did some work this year with our church, and we were trying to do some stuff. Because of COVID, we were trying to do some not concerts, but music and things like that. And they wanted to use multicam setup. And sometimes it was tough to get those cameras when you'd go from one to the other to look even similar, and sometimes you'd have to say, this is the best we can do, but even things like zooming in and things like that can affect it, how far the lens throw is. So I don't know. I think it's little things like that we creators just imagine people are just like, oh, I'm not watching that anymore. And people are out there going like, what are you talking about? I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Eventually you learn how to do that stuff. But if you take too much time on the front end worrying about it, to the earlier point, you're not creating it. And that's the most important part, is to get started, ugly, as our buddy Chris Kermitskis would say, and get it out there. And then, I mean, if you make a mistake here and there, we all make mistakes. And heck, Jim made a mistake about 6 minutes ago. No one else noticed but me. But, we all make mistakes, and we'll solve them.
Yeah, I took an intermission right in the middle of the show.
How about that?
Well,
we thought you hated us.
It's better than perfect. And I agree. Now, if you were doing, like a commercial for a client or something like that, you always want it to be the best it can be. And again, I'm a perfectionist, which is bad when it comes to creating content. But again, just it's more about creating, and the things that we get all wound up about, that it's just all it is an excuse to keep from doing. So
right. Yeah. No, this has been great, Kevin. Kevin, what's the best way for people to connect with you? Visa.com.
There's things on there that you can do if you want to check out my YouTube channel and subscribe to it. I'd love that too. And that's Kevin Kolbe as well. I'm also on Twitter and Instagram at Kevin Kolbe Media. But if you wanted to start somewhere and find out a little bit more, my website, kevinkolbe.com, would be a great place to start.
And speaking of your YouTube channel, you just crossed a milestone, right?
Yeah, this year's been crazy. When I finally got serious and focused about my YouTube channel, when I finally did what I told everybody else to do, go figure, I really saw it grow. And yeah, I think a couple of weeks ago, I hit 2,000 subs. When the growth took off this year, I had some goals that I wanted to get to 1,000 subs by the 1st of August. And I got there July 31st, how many ever days it has. And then I said, it would be really great if I could get into the YouTube partner program, which means you're monetized, among some other things, by the end of the year. And I got there by mid-October. And then I thought, okay, if maybe I can get to 2,000 subs by the end of the year. And I got there a couple of weeks ago. So
that's awesome.
So it's good. But, the numbers are good. And with different levels on YouTube, you get to enjoy other things like a custom URL and being in the partner program and things like that. But the best part is just connecting with a community, and YouTube is my place to share and teach from and connect with, and just love it. It's my core platform. Absolutely love it.
Yeah. Well, man, it's been great having you on the show. And for those of you who are watching, go subscribe to what I consider the best channel for learning how to do live streaming, editing your video. He makes it, easy enough for, a dummy like me to, or Jim to understand. Kevin, thank you so much for joining us, man.
You're very kind. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thanks. Thanks for listening to Dealcasters. Congratulations, you've taken another step forward in your content creation journey. Please don't forget to hit the subscribe or follow button here in your favorite podcast player so you can be reminded every time we drop an episode.
We love hearing from our listeners and viewers. And if you're wanting to watch our shows live on Amazon, feel free to follow Dealcasters Live as well at dealcasters.live. Follow us on Twitter or subscribe to our YouTube channel, where we also included added content that you cannot find anywhere else.
If you have questions about this episode or have something you want us to review, you can also email us at dealcasters@dealcasters.live. Thanks again for listening, and you know the deal. Don't fear the gear.